You are now listening to the Molten Fantasy Sports Podcast.
Yes, hello and welcome back to another one of our NRL team previews for 2023. This episode, we're tackling the North Queensland Cowboys. I'm your host, the Supercoach Brain, and I'm joined by my co-host, the Supercoach Mattrix. Mate, we've got a lot to talk about with this Cowboys lineup.
Being from further down in Queensland, I actually hate the Cowboys, and I hate that I'm starting to like their lineup.
Yeah, you'd be, I guess, a bit conflicted, wouldn't you? It's a crosstown rivalry, I guess you could call it. And There's a lot of guys here that are very relevant to Supercoach, and we'll talk about why very soon. So I guess on this episode, as always, we'll talk through our predicted lineups, the guys that we're looking at, essentially, our booms, our busts, our cheapies, and some value picks, and our smokies. So I guess we'll kick things off with the man with the number one on his back, mate, Scotty Drinkwater. Had an absolute cracker of a season last season. Averaged 71 points. Priced at 746,000. Do you see him as a viable option to start with? Is he a guy that you've looked at and tried to fit into your team?
So, Scotty Drinkwater was part of my team last year. I loved him, nicknamed him Scotty Drink Bolter. And, Bolters are my favourite beer, so we're up there. But, I just think at that premium price, I'm probably just going to look elsewhere this year. What I loved about him last year is that I bought him cheap. He kept scoring. It was a bit inconsistent, but he could bang out 120. You'd get that 50 every now and then. And, it's just not really what I'm looking for in the this year. I'm looking for a bit more consistency.
Yeah, I can understand why you'd say it. I mean, he was very attacking points reliant, but he was getting those attacking points very consistently last year through all games. I mean, the guy was in everything. I didn't have him at all throughout the season last year, and I couldn't actually watch Cowboys games. It just made me too nervous. You had to kind of watch through, with one eye closed, basically, because he was in everything. He popped up on sweeping plays a lot, and the Cowboys played off the back of him. They played through him a lot. So it was a tough watch last year. And he's my smoky for this year. I feel like he's going to be one of those guys that probably isn't going to be considered a main guy to start with the season, just because of obviously how well he did last year and where he's priced at. People are looking at guys like Teddy, and they're looking at guys like Latrell Mitchell, or they're going cheaper to Turbo. So I feel like he's in that kind of price between Turbo and Teddy, where he might get forgotten and could be actually a half-decent pod option with the Cowboys draw.
I do think if you find yourself a bit behind and a little bit playing catch up after 5 weeks, and you're serious about moving up, and you want to go boom or bust, and you just want to risk it to get the biscuit, you could look at him. He's going to be a pod. I don't think he's going to be that well owned. I think there's blokes like your Teddies and even your Turbos and your Latrells that people are going to look to before, and maybe spending 1.5 mil on Dylan Edwards and Scott Drinkwater is the answer. So.
It could be the absolute masterstroke if you went that direction, mate. I would not be able to watch Roosters games if I was fading Teddy this year. He's just one of those guys that you've got to have, I think.
You can only have 2 fullbacks. Like, you're not going to watch Manly games either if Tommy's playing. Like, you're not going to watch Cowboys games. Are you going to watch? Are you just going to watch AFL this year, mate?
Maybe, I might switch codes, I think. Might be a little bit easier for the heartstrings. Mate, moving on to the centres and wingers, we've got Kyle Felt and Tuolangi, as always, from last year, and then you got Val Holmes and Hiku in the centres. So nothing's changed there from last year's lineup. Cowboys, all in all, when we go through this lineup, there's actually not much that's changed. A couple of guys have come in, but it's not actually changing the core makeup of this team. Anybody in the back line there and the centres or wing interest you there, mate?
Yeah, look, what I like about them is not much has changed. They were very good last year. It does make it hard to find someone cheap to get into your lineup, but I think some of the premium guys are guys that you'll look, especially with that draw, that first 13 games, and I think they're going to score a lot of tries, and I want the goal kicker, Val Holmes, in my team if I can find him. At least up until Origin. Yeah,
he sat in my team for pretty much up until about 2 days ago. I do want him. He's priced at 724,000, so he's not cheap. 68 69 average essentially last season, and the guy was in everything again. But you mentioned the Cowboys bye, and I think it's probably important that we do touch on that initially before we move forward any further. When we talk about the Cowboys bye, to give everybody a little bit of an understanding of why it's so good, in their first 12 games, they actually only play 3 teams that were in the top 8 last year. When you look at the draw, they've got the Warriors twice, they've got the Dolphins, they've got the Tigers, they've got some pretty juicy options there. And obviously that means a ton of attacking points for guys like Val Holmes and Drinkwater and a couple of others that we're going to be mentioning very soon. And also I think a big draw card for the Cowboys this year is the fact that they don't have a bye until round 15. Yep. Obviously with a team on the bye every single week, that's something you've got to take into consideration. So they're actually playing the first 2 major bye rounds as well during the Origin period. So basically you're looking at any of these guys that you pick up, you're not going to have to consider or think about how you're going to shuffle your team around when they're on the bye up until after that first Origin period. So definitely a very juicy draw and very advantageous to start with these guys early.
Yeah, I think so. I think Val scored more than Drinkwater last year. Put that into perspective, and he had the disruptions of Origin. They're going to score a lot of tries. They're such a great football team. I think Val's a guy that has a little bit of base. Like, if you look at Caulfield, if you look at Tuilagi or whatever, they're very try-dependent. But Val, I think he can bang out 70 every week for the first 13 weeks. And then Origin comes along and you move him onto somebody that's going to play up to the halves.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, cool. Let me mark it. So moving on to the halves, we've got obviously Tom Dearden and Chad Townsend, both the 6 and 7 from last year, so no changes there. Chad Townsend, not essentially overly Supercoach relevant, and we were talking about players last episode, Matty, that are quality footballers, but just it doesn't accumulate to Supercoach points, and I think Chad Townsend's the perfect example of that. 39 average last year.
Steers the boys around the park and makes everybody else better around him. But I won't be looking at getting him in my team this year.
One guy that did have a bit of a breakout is Tommy Dearden last year. Averaged 58.2. It's a pretty decent average from a guy you wouldn't expect that from. 612,000 he's starting the season at. Bit of an awkward price though. Probably steer clear for me.
Yeah, and I wish I got on him in the 400s last year, and I would have been super happy. But there's so many other quality 5'8s and a bit better value elsewhere. So I can't see him. I can see him doing this again, but I can't see him getting 70. And if I'm going that awkward price, I really want to see a price rise and make a bit of cash. Yeah,
I'm with you on that one. Jordan McLean in the 8, I'm not overly interested in him. But there is the other prop that you're very interested in. I'll let you take the floor on him.
Look, Ruben Cotter's in my team. He's an absolute workhorse. I reckon you're getting him at a bit of a discount from last year due to a few injuries. Very premium at front row forward, but front row forwards are dismal this year. Just somebody you can't look past. I wish he had that hooker duel again. You're getting the premium Cotter at a closer to mid-tier price. For example, Tohu Harris and Joe Offengowie are more expensive. And, you're just getting tremendous value for $620K. Don't be surprised to see him being the best front row forward in the comp, Supercoach-wise or otherwise.
Yeah, he's in my team at the moment. I have played around with taking him out, but I mean, he's at a really nice price. So I'm more than happy to bank that 60 average, and I think he will increase or improve on that. He only played 16 games, so I think that average is also injury affected. He missed a few games at the back end of the year, came back and averaged only 50 in the final 6 games of the season with that hamstring injury that he was carrying. So definitely room for improvement there. Probably underpriced. You're right. So I'm a fan of Cotter. He's in my side at the moment.
Yeah, he's nearly 25% owned too. So a lot of people are looking at him as well, and for good reason.
Absolutely. And mate, we've got Reece Robson at hooker. I'm pretty high on Reece Robson this year. I actually have a pretty big claim to make on Reece Robson, funnily enough. I genuinely believe that he could actually be the top scoring hooker this year. When we look at the first the first 12 games, like we mentioned, they've got such a favourable draw. And we know that Reece Robson's very attacking reliant. He does generate a lot of his points from attacking stats. He had 7 tries and 7 try assists last year and is very creative reliant to get his points. But he does still rack up base stats. He still makes tackles. He still does the job as any other hooker would. But with that draw, there's plenty of upside there for Reece Robson. There's a good chance that he could actually be the guy this year. Not that I'm saying Harry Grant's going to have a bad year. I'm more saying that I think Reece Robson's going to have a bit of a breakout year this year with time in the New South Wales squad. Is going to help his confidence and also just the year that he had in general last year. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think to be in the top echelon of Supercoach, you have to make calculated risks. And anytime you're fading a bloke like Harry Grant, again, you're going to be watching every Storm game with your eyes closed. But Reece Robson, you can do a lot with that 150K that you save, and there's just as big of a chance of you getting the same amount of output. He's only 7% owned. He's a guy I've got in my team. I'm either going to go cheapie, or if you call Brandon Smith a cheapie, or a premium. He's currently the third most expensive hooker, and mate, you've called it for him to be the number one, but he could definitely be better than Damien Cook by the end of the year. I think he's already better than Damien Cook. He could be better than Damien Cook on the Supercoach scene as well. Yeah,
absolutely. He is my boom this episode for the Cowboys, and
boom shakalaka.
We have to throw it in there because I'm very high on him. Let's see if that big claim's going to come to fruition for me this year, and we'll see what the end of the season looks like.
I think you're going to be happy with those first 13 weeks anyway. So let's just see if he makes the side after that. So.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I'm definitely not planning on not having Harry Grant all season. That's I'm a little bit smarter than that. I know I need to get him in at some point. It's just more a matter of is Grant going to start really fast, and is he going to gain cash? I'm probably hoping that he doesn't, and I can upgrade a Brandon Smith potentially to Harry Grant after Origin. That would be ideal.
Yeah, great.
Mate, moving on to the 11, 12 and 13, Cohen Hess. Big pass for me. I don't see him being in that starting lineup initially for very long. Jeremiah Nanai, though, you've got a pretty, I suppose, big take on him. You're a big fan of Nanai. Yeah,
look, he is a try-scoring machine. And if you're a gambling man and you want to take risks and you want to save some money from your Murrays for feeders, your Crichton, could be a masterstroke getting Nanai in. Just be very aware that it does depend on him scoring a lot of tries. But I think he can again. Look, he might not score 19 again, but he can score a lot of tries. He's going to be in a very good team. Mate, I was there at Suncorp one night where he caught 2 bombs and fell over for 2 tries. And he's a big body. He's still fast. He's still growing. He's still learning. You could see a bit of improvement. So
yeah. No, I completely understand why you're going in that direction. I'm going to go against you, though. I'm going to say that it's going to be one of those years where he does have a bit of a downgrade. I can't see him averaging 63 again. I feel like that's a pretty inflated price based on the fact that he did have 19 tries. First of all, that's such an impressive stat for a second rower to have 19 tries in a season.
And a rookie.
And a rookie. And you don't see wingers or centres rack up 19 tries in a season, let alone second rowers. So he can find the try line, absolutely. I just feel like maybe there's going to be a bit of a level out in his score this year.
Do you think? But I think sometimes during those weaker weeks, you could put a VC on him and roll the dice. Like, he's a guy that can score 140 one week and that can score 40 the next week. It just depends, how big of a punter you are.
Yeah, he's in that David Fafita kind of mold, isn't he? It's just it is boom or bust every single week. You're going to get 30 or you're going to get 130. So. Mate, good luck to you. Last guy, Jason Taumalolo. My thoughts on Taumalolo are that he frustrated the living shit out of me last year, and that wasn't his fault. I think everybody was really high on the fact that he'd play big minutes, that he'd play 60-plus every single game, and it just didn't eventuate to that. He just didn't get the minutes that everybody thought he was going to get at lock, which was really disappointing because we know what he can do. The bloke is just a barnstorming runner. I feel like he probably just didn't get the minutes and the opportunity that everybody was hoping he'd have. So, and he's priced at 607,000 at a 57 average, and that's just it's just awkward mid-price territory that I'm going to fade this year. I think. How about you?
Yeah, Yeah, I think I'd look at him a bit more if he had that duel again this year. But they've taken the front row forward out, and probably for good reason. But that's just, second row forwards, you can find a lot of value. You can find a lot of good players, and we'll be talking about them in the coming weeks. I think for 607K, again, I'll be looking elsewhere. We'll be watching Lolo a little bit. If he starts slow, drops a little bit, you get him in the early 500s. I can see him rising back up to 650 and being a guy that you can play every week. But yeah, to start the year, it's a no from me, dog.
Yeah, absolutely. We have to add that soundbite in, I think. On the bench, we've got Jake Granville. I can't see him stealing many minutes from Robson, to be honest. They'll probably use him in the middle again like they did last year.
I hope he's out of the team and they can find someone else and just play 80 minutes for Robson. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And mate, James Tarmow, you're not a fan.
Oh, he should not be owned. He's over the hill. He's overpriced. He should be 0% owned. If you've got him in your team, just there's a little crossbar in your top right. Just delete app.
Yeah. Mate, 504,000, 48 average. He's priced on playing 50, 55 minutes at the Tigers.
And he might play 25, 30.
Yeah, as at best, I think. The other two guys here are Mitch Dunn. Now, he's obviously only played 2 games last year, did an ACL early on and didn't see any more game time for the rest of the season. So whether he fits onto that bench or not, I'm not quite sure, because they've got some decent options there, and there's a couple of guys here that we're going to talk about that will be coming in or are a little bit uncertain. So,
yep.
And the last one's Griffin Neame, apparently is training the house down at preseason training. So he's a bit of a watch for me. I don't have him written down as my cheapie, but 368,000. I mean, there's worse options, I guess, if he gets starter minutes and they use him instead of Cohen Hess. That could be something that you'd look at.
Yeah, and it's just one of those, to quote Rob Kennedy, watch this space. If he has a few good trials and finds his way with the number 11 on his back, for 360K, why wouldn't you?
Yeah. 100%. Now, one guy we haven't named because he's been stood down indefinitely at this stage is Luciano Leilua. Obviously, a guy that would fit in to the second row in the starting lineup pretty quickly as soon as he is available, but there's just obviously a fair bit going on with him at the moment. So he's been stood down, no fault clause. So he's not someone we're looking at initially to start the season until we get a bit of clarity there with what his situation is.
Yeah, the Supercoach guys should just give him a 0 and drop him down in price, and then he can become a cheapie if ever he comes back.
I do like that. We'll have to write into Tommy Sangster and see whether we can make that happen, I think.
Yeah, I'll get him on the line.
And, mate, a couple of other guys. Highland Lukey, they were pretty high on him last year, but he's out with a knee until round 4. And then there's a good chance he probably comes in for Cohen Hess. Seems quite likely. And then obviously Hess drops back onto the bench and Mitch Dunn probably drops out of the 17. That's how I see it playing out. But again, at the end of the day, it's not going to be overly Supercoach relevant, so we can probably push on there. But there is a cheapie here that you'd like to have a chat about. Yeah,
Jack Kosciuszki. I think like in any of these elite teams, and we're starting with the best in our team previews, I think if ever you see a guy and their price starts with a 2 and they're playing in such a quality team and they're going to be playing, good quality minutes, there's going to be a lot of points. There's going to be a lot of money to be made. If he makes the lineup, I wouldn't start him any week. I wouldn't give him a bench role, but, I'd chuck him deep. Have him as a bit of a cash cow and, let him get fat and sell him later.
Yeah. Mate, I don't know whether you remember, but last year, I think it would have been maybe the first 4 or 5 rounds, Peter Hiku was starting to gain a bit of traction with consistent scores of 60+. I think he went 3 or 4 weeks in a row getting 60+. His base stats were through the roof. And then everybody jumped on him, and as soon as they bought him in their team, he literally went back to being a complete bust and doing nothing and averaging 35.
Yeah, he's like the North Queensland Talakai.
He is, basically. As soon as everybody bought him, he did nothing for him, which is why he's my bust, for very good reason. I think, look, there's some good youngsters coming through that aren't getting a run at the moment. So, if Peter Hiku starts slowly, mate, the guy's in his 30s, he just hit his 30s, you've got good youngsters coming up. Tom Chester has been training at centre in pre-season as well, so there's some positional pressure. I might actually see a change there if Hiku starts slowly. So, mate, Hiku is my bust for this year.
Yeah. I think with any of these teams, they're just gonna start with what worked last year. And Peter Hiku, didn't really do anything wrong. He just didn't do too much right throughout the end of the season. And look, if they lose a couple on the trot and and they look to shake things up, you can get opportunities for one of those 200k cheapies, 300k cheapies, and I'll be looking at it. We'll be talking about it on our team list show. So.
100%. I mean, look, they've lost Tom Gilbert, so that's why that kind of second row positions opened up for Cohen Hess, which, because of experience, you probably see him starting, but that's a bit of a lottery there, really. We'll wait until we see Team List Tuesday. We could see a bit of a shake-up there in that number 11 jersey. Mate, I guess to round out the episode on the Cowboys, how do you see them going this year? Where do you see them finishing?
Yeah, I see them finishing exactly where they were. I don't think they're as good as a couple of other ones, but I see them finishing third. I see them having a very good year and going deep into finals. They're deep too. They're deeper than some of the other teams. It's going to depend on how Scotty Drinkwater goes. Tommy did, if he doesn't drop back a little bit, and Ruben Cotter pull them forward. So
I think we'll see a fair bit of North Queensland heavy Supercoach teams in the lead up before we see Team List Tuesday, which for good reason, like we've mentioned with the bye. So plenty to talk about there. But mate, thanks for hopping on as always. Always good to chat teams, and we'll continue to push on with the rest of our teams in the coming days and weeks in the lead up to the season. Mate, before we hop off, where can everybody reach you when they want to talk about Supercoach?
They can find me on Twitter at SC_Mattrix. And where can they find you, Brandon?
Yeah, just on Twitter as well, mate. Just Brain_FS or Supercoach Brain, and you'll find me. So thanks, guys. We'll see you in the coming days for the next team preview. Cheers.
Thanks, mate.